Spreaker.com universe. This is indeed the great one, Nate the Great, here live on Spreaker.com for Pro Talk Wrestling episode 98. That is right, just a few more episodes away until the Sunday finale. And with me here is the illegitimate son to the illegitimate father, Jim Cornette, the mastermind behind Wrestling with Regret. I have with me here tonight the one and only Brian Zane. Brian, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Nathan, thanks for having me on your show. And the paternity tests are still, the jury's still out on it. We're still waiting to get the lab results back. But as of right now, the relationship between me and Jim Cornette is still unofficial in terms of father and son. Thanks for having me on the show.
Not a problem. It's just a pleasure and an honor to have you on here. I've been a big fan of your video, and your interview with Spencer and Max was just great. And I thought, you know what? I need to have this guy on the show. I think he seems pretty awesome. Definitely one of those guys who I really respect. And if you guys haven't checked out Wrestling with Regret, you're missing out on so much great content. We'll get into that in just a little bit. First things first, though, Brian, when you got into professional wrestling, what was the one thing that kind of stuck out to you the most that made you think, you know what, I'm interested in this, and I think I am going to be a big fan of this?
Well, I guess, I've been a fan of wrestling since the late 90s. I was, 12 or 13 when I first got really into it, the Attitude Era. So me being the young hormonal teen as the Attitude Era was happening, it was a perfect combination. They hooked me at just the right time. So, from then on out, I always kind of had, visions in my head. Oh, wouldn't it be cool if I was this this kind of character, this and that. So I've always toyed with it in the back of my mind, but I was never an athlete. I never did sports or anything like that, so I didn't have any kind of athletic background. I did have a theater background because I've been performing in theater since I was a little kid, so I was a natural performer. I remember I was a freshman in college, and I was at the University of Oregon, and I was just kind of looking up on a whim. Somehow I discovered that Playboy Buddy Rose, who's famously known for having the blowaway diet sketch in the WWF, Buddy Rose and Colonel LeBeers had a wrestling school up in Portland, my hometown, which is 2 hours away on the road. So, I figured, it's like the opportunity's there. I've always wanted to give it a try. And, what's the worst that can happen? And so, that's kind of how I started training for it. And, eventually time went on, and, started wrestling in 2006. Did that. I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary, my first match, and it's been fun ever since.
Yeah, talking about your first matchup, you actually just uploaded a little bit of what happened during that deal, but what was kind of your mindset going into your first ever wrestling match, and what were some of the things that kind of went wrong during that deal? Because I know you talked about that quite a bit.
Well, the first match I ever had was, against a big dude, and there wasn't much to it, really. And to be honest, though, that's the match that I show in Wrestling with Regret is technically my third match, second or third match, really. The first match I did went a lot longer and got a lot more competitive, but we don't have video of it. I could never find it. So, as far as canon is concerned, my match at All the Door is my first match. Starting out wrestling was really nerve-wracking. You get all these. It was probably one of the most nervous experiences I went through in my life. Was my first wrestling match. It was in front of a crowd of 20 people, and it was in this little pizza joint / bar, and it was just. Looking back, it was very exhilarating. Just that I did it. If you look back at my matches, I have a few of my matches from Portland up on YouTube. You can see I was never the best wrestler. Physique aside, it was just I boxed at least one thing a match. When it came to actually intensity, delivering moves, I didn't really have a good look for it. I move around like a glitchy video game character. That's the best way I could describe my wrestling style. It's very glitchy, very ragdoll physics style kind of video game character. And, it was just difficult. Mentally, I understood how to do the wrestling and how psychology worked and everything, but physically, I didn't have the coordination to really be able to pull it off. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise that about a year later, I became a manager, because I still can be involved in the business, and I just don't have to, embarrass myself out in the ring anymore.
Well, at least you can give yourself a little more credit, because I think I'd much rather watch one of your matches than an Eva Marie match, but that's a totally different story right there. So talking about the genesis of Wrestling Regret, how did it come out to be? Because I'm guessing is a little more than just, somebody saying like, oh, you have some good opinions here, you should start your own YouTube series. How did Wrestling with Regret come to be?
It kind of came about a few years ago. Actually, it was like 4 years ago I first had the idea to do it. The show is almost 3 years old, but the idea for Wrestling with Regret kind of came well before that, because I've always been a big fan of channels or online critics like the Nostalgia Critic and Linkara and Todd in the Shadows and Phaelus and the Angry Video Game Nerd. And as I'm watching all this stuff, I realized, like, God, there's a lot of critics online for all these different genres, but there was no one really covering wrestling in this way, in this kind of humorous, looking back at these silly angles, silly storylines kind of thing. No one was really doing that. The one or two people I were able to find, they weren't very big channels, and I didn't like their production value. And so I was like, well, gosh, I have some opinions, and I have experience in the wrestling business, so I think I have different ones than the average fan who goes on YouTube, and I have TV production experience, so I have that edge. Boy, why don't I just do it? I'll make a channel like that. And so that's kind of where it came about. And so the hardest part was just getting the ball rolling, finding content, finding stuff to make fun of, writing episodes. That was really the toughest part, was just getting started. Because, like I said, there was about a year between when I first had the idea and when I finally actually pulled the trigger on it. But yeah, and trying to think, because there are a lot of people on YouTube who do talk about wrestling, but it's all audio based. Like there's Meltzer and there's Alvarez and there's stuff. And of course, so their stuff's all over YouTube. There's podcasts, and then there's Saw Monster, and then there's Mike Work. There's all these different people on YouTube who talk about wrestling, but it's all audio based. And I think there's such, at the time when I was making the show, I felt there was such untapped potential for doing a video version of it. Kind of, again, the Nostalgia Critic. That's the style I've admitted in the past that I have, lovingly ripped off for my show. So, yeah, I think that was kind of how it all came about. I just wanted to be the first person or one of the first people to fill that niche. And since then, there's been, plenty of people who do the wrestling thing. I feel the really good wrestling YouTube channels, whether it comes to video or audio, are very few and far between. But I think that I consider myself one of the best, and I'm not trying to be egotistical about it. I just think in terms of a quality standpoint, like you look at video production and just story arcs and just the way it's done, I think mine's one of the stronger ones out there.
How many videos have you gotten uploaded on your channel right now?
There's about 170 something that are live, and there's at least 4 or 5 that are in the can and ready to be uploaded. They're mostly re-uploads. Some older episodes that got blocked, they're going to be put up at a later time. I've got more on the way, but right now it's getting close to 200 videos, which I never expected to make that many.
Oh, that's insane. And through all those videos, you've worked with a lot of countless people. You've worked with James Mitchell, you've worked with Adam Blampier, you worked with Jim Cornette. Who's probably been your your favorite person to work with when creating a lot of those videos?
Well, I think just from a pure, having been in the business and, studied him for such a long time, Jim Cornette is my number one, mark-out moment, having worked with him in the past, because, anyone who's seen me manage before, because I've been managing for the last 9 years, anyone who's seen me manage or who's watched my show long enough, I do look a lot like Jim Cornette. I can't really fix this, and by this, as I'm talking right now, you can't see on the phone, but I'm circling my finger around my face. You can't fix this. It's hard for me to not look like Jim Cornette the way I do. So that's why I started doing a sweatsuit gimmick when I would manage, to try and separate from that, because for a while I was dressing up in the shirt and tie and everything, and there was the obvious comparisons. But, even if you don't consider the physical appearance, Cornette has been one of my bigger influences as a manager. Him and Paul Heyman, I would say, are my 2 biggest influences in terms of managerial style. So getting to work with him and doing the video where he gets to punch me out as Vince Russo and me getting to interview him and just getting to pick his brain and just talk to him, over the phone and planning it and stuff. It was just a really great experience getting to meet him and get to learn from him. And it's one of my biggest idols in wrestling, one of my biggest inspirations in wrestling. Getting to work with him was amazing. Getting to work with Jim Mitchell for this recent Heroes of Wrestling video was really cool too. Didn't think I'd get him. I just kind of stumbled upon finding him, on social media and asked, hey, would you be interested in doing this? Crazy idea of mine. And he's like, yeah, sure. And him being on my YouTube channel, he said it was the first time in like 8 years he's been on camera being produced, for quote unquote television or for video. So it's kind of cool to be one of the people to kind of bring him back out, so to speak.
Now, you did mention that you were dressing up a lot like Vince Russo and did the whole thing with Jim Cornette, but you've also had a bit of a personality of dressing up like different people. I remember last video you dressed up like, I think it was Captain Lou Albano. You've done a bunch of other characters. Was that just kind of one of those things that just helped more create content, or was that just one of those little ideas that I thought, might be something fun to do? Let's give it a shot.
Yeah, I think I think if you watch like a lot of those other YouTube critics that I referred to earlier, I think the ones that make me laugh the most are the ones that have like a diverse cast of characters, whether it be just different people, like friends of the content creator, or it's just like that same guy in a costume. I think, and that's what's funnier to me, because like it's so obvious that it's the same guy, but like, he's talking to himself essentially. The whole Lou Albano thing kind of came up by accident because I was reviewing Body Slam a couple of years ago, and I thought it'd be funny to have Lou Albano, or me as Lou Albano, come in and like interject a couple times. And then as I was writing it, it just kind of evolved into this whole thing where it turns out Lou Albano's a demon and he lives in hell. And it was just so wacky. It's just one of those things I try and keep bringing back every chance I get, because maybe it's just me that finds it funny, but I think the Lou Albano impression that I do is so bad. It's so bad it's good. And I just get to play him up as this kind of like lovable, goofy guy who like does dumb things, but it's like he's just kind of crazy. And yeah, it's just he's one of my favorite characters I do in the show. Mike the Melissa Love Machine is kind of is a close second, but yeah, I think having funny little characters like that just it gives you more material to work with, because you're essentially adding a new character who gets to say some things and do some things that you yourself can't do.
Yeah. With a lot of your videos, you like to do like top moments, top best moments, top worst moments, and they always seem to revolve around the number 8. What is so special about that number, out of my curiosity?
There's really nothing special about 8. I mean, if you just look at it from trying to stand out, I mean, there's a million top 10s out there. Everyone does top 10. Nostalgia Critic does top 11. Why does he do 11? Because he likes to go one step beyond. That's what he said. I do 8. Well, the first top 8 I ever did was my top 8 worst Vince McMahon storylines, and you could probably fill 10, but just because I think it was just a severe bout of laziness I was going through at the time. I just wanted to do 8 because I figured I have 8 really strong ones. I don't really want to try and like fill the remaining 2 with like weak ones,
Okay.
So I came up with 8, and I'm like, yeah, well, I don't want to change it now. I've done 8 once. I don't want to bop around between 8, 9, 10, 8, So I figured I might as well keep a top 8, and that sets me apart because nobody else does top 8s, and why be like everybody else? Why do top 8 like everybody else who does a list?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I honestly thought it was maybe just like representing like how many years have you either watched wrestling, or how many years possibly like an anniversary for your show, something like that. But no, that actually makes a lot more sense.
I was just being lazy one day. That's the only reason.
So, is there anybody that you would really like to work with? Like I said, I mentioned some of the people that you have worked with in the past. Is there anybody in particular where it's just like, oh, if I worked with this guy, I would be like super happy, or I feel like my life is complete or something?
I mean, any chance I get to work with somebody in the business, I think is something I could check off the bucket list. I mean, like I said, I worked with Cornette, I worked with Sinister Minister, I worked with Tyrus.